Hello! In this video, I would like to talk about service blueprints, what they are, where we could use them, and of course, how to create them. Services are in principle intangible. In most cases, service delivery is a complex process that involves many people, many technologies, and systems. To create an inspiring service, these elements should work together seamlessly and without friction. For this to happen, service processes must be designed very consciously, and this is where service blueprints come into play. Service blueprints are diagrams that visualize the process, how a service is delivered. They depict all necessary process steps, activities, and decisions, as well as relationships between different service components. Service blueprints can be used both to optimize an existing service and to design a new one. You must be wondering how service blueprints differ from customer journey maps. Both concepts are indeed similar, as both allow us to describe and visualize a process. However, while customer journey maps focus exclusively on customers and their experience, service blueprints visualize all process steps for creating the service. You can think of service blueprints as an extension to customer journey maps. Service blueprints combine the activities of the customer with the actions of the service providers and support processes. Some activities of the service providers may be seen to the customers, and some of them run invisibly in the background. So service blueprints allow us to visualize interactions between different departments in the company. The blueprint visualizes every step and every actor from the customer to third parties. We can distinguish between 5 types of activities based on their proximity to the customer. These 5 types are separated by specific lines. This allows us to transparently present the way our service is provided. From the service blueprint visualization, we can easily recognize which activities are carried out by the customer, which ones by the service provider, and which of these activities are visible or invisible to the customer. Just as with the customer journey mapping or persona development, a service blueprint should be developed in a team and based on empirical data. You will find templates for service blueprints online. You can also use common office programs such as PowerPoint or Visio to create one from scratch. Let's now look at the elements of a service blueprint and how a service blueprint is structured. In most cases, the activities in the service blueprint are classified into 5 categories and presented chronologically. They are ordered according to the proximity to the customer. The first 2 categories are customer activities and front stage activities. In between these 2 categories lies the external line of interaction. It divides the customer activities from activities performed by the company. Next, we have backstage activities. These are activities performed by the service provider. However, they are not seen by the customer. Front stage and backstage activities are separated by the line of visibility. All activities that are not visible to the customer should be below this line. Customer-induced support activities are all activities and interactions that help service provider to deliver the service. These are all activities carried out by employees who are not necessarily in contact with customers, but whose actions are required for the service to be delivered. In between backstage and customer-induced support activities is the internal line of interaction. In the backstage area, it separates the activities of the service department from those of other departments. So it separates contact employees from those who are not directly involved in interactions with customers. Customer-independent support activities are activities that can be prepared before and that enable the company to actually provide the service at the time requested by the customer. In between lies the line of order penetration. It separates customer-induced activities from customer-independent activities. From a service blueprint, you can identify which activities should be carried out by the customer and which by the company, which activities are visible to the customer and which remain invisible, and which activities are directly related to the service for the specific customer and which ones are necessary to create the possibility to provide this service. Whether you are visualizing an existing service or developing a new one, you can always use the same symbols. The square with beveled edge symbolizes the customer activities. We use a simple square for activities of the provider. A diamond visualizes a decision situation after which a set of different activities can follow. Arrows visualize the order in which the activities take place. With the letter F, you can visualize error sources if you have already recognized them. Let us look at an example, a repair service. Let us assume we manufacture industrial equipment and sell maintenance contracts for this equipment. One of our clients has a failure in his equipment and requires a repair service. On the upper level, we place customer activities. In our process, our customer calls our service department and explains that a machine is not working. Then, our service support schedules an appointment. This, of course, is visible to the customer, so this activity is visualized on the second level. Then, we schedule for dispatch. This is done by a system in the background, so it is a support activity. At the agreed time, our employee drives to the customer. This activity is not directly visible by the customer and is carried out by the service department. So it is an invisible company activity and is placed on the third level. This activity could be enabled, for example, by processes behind the line of order penetration, by ensuring that employees and vehicles are available at the appropriate time. In other words, these are processes that ensure that the resources are available to provide repair services when needed. The responsible technician at the customer site now meets our service technician and explains the problem. This again is customer activity. Our service technician examines the machine and classifies the problem. Both activities are visible for the customer, hence are placed on the second level. Now it can happen that the service employee has brought everything necessary and can repair the machine immediately. It can also be the case that the necessary equipment, spare parts, etc. are missing and he has to leave without having done anything. This is where the process branches out and this is how the entire process is visualized. I think you recognize the principle. If we now reflect on the process up to this point, we may recognize that a potential source of error is the initial problem description of the customer. We can therefore mark it with an F. We should take a closer look at this potential source of error when optimizing the process. If it makes sense, the activities can of course still be broken down into large process steps in order to increase clarity. Here, for example, in preparation, analysis, and solution. Now, when you have an idea what a service blueprint is, let's consider why and when you might need it. Whenever customers participate in service delivery and interactions take place, these are particularly critical to success. Therefore, these interactions should be designed very consciously. The service blueprint enables you to identify exactly which activities your customer needs to perform at which process step and which they perceive. You can then design it very consciously so that the experience you create is inspiring to your customer. Through the visualization of the processes and their intersections, we can identify and solve the weak points more easily. Finally, service blueprints also help you to create a common understanding of the process. This is important in the design process so that all members of the design team have the same understanding. It is also important in the implementation phase, when future service staff needs to be trained. Service blueprints can be used to communicate the planned service process. To sum up, service blueprints provide a good starting point for developing an efficient and effective process for service delivery and achieving higher customer satisfaction. So let's now look at how we create service blueprints. First, you have to define which service you want to visualize and where the process boundaries lie. For existing services, we start by describing the current status. It is recommended to start with the customer perspective. Figure out what the customer goes through and put down all the activities in chronological order. Once you have compiled all customer activities, add the activities in the other categories: visible activities and invisible activities, customer-induced and customer-independent support activities. Think about the following questions. What do employees do during each activity the customer performs? What support processes are necessary? Then check the dividing lines and make sure that you really have assigned each activity to the correct category. When everything is in place, link the activities to show how different actors work together during the service process. Relationships and dependencies are visualized by arrows. If a shape has a single arrow, the exchange takes place in the indicated direction. A double arrow indicates that a certain agreement must be reached or that two activities are interdependent in some way. For new services, you proceed in the same way. However, you start by developing a rough process model. Figure out what triggers your service and what the end result is. Then you can describe the activities required for this service, first from a customer perspective. If necessary, these are then broken down into sub-processes and then arranged chronologically. Next, in your team, you can develop a concept of which internal actors need to perform what type of activities to make the service happen. These are then placed in the categories. Afterwards, the activities are connected again with arrows. If you have the service blueprint in front of you, you have a good basis for further optimization or sometimes already for implementation of your service.